Hey guys, welcome back to the Scrapologist episode 2, talking about the results, of course, of UFC 261, not 264, sorry about that on my last video. UFC 261, Usman versus Masvidal 2. Crazy night of fights, can't wait to get into all of it with you guys, and thanks for tuning back into the Scrapologist. We launched the channel a few days ago, and already we're inching up to 30 subscribers, so to all my friends and family who have subscribed to the channel since we started off, thank you so much for your support and your shares on Facebook. Bobby Wasabi and Duraba, Shazil, everybody who shared the link, Kevin Satterfield, of course, Alex Pokey, who's going to be working on some of the graphics and some of the stuff you guys are going to see on the channel soon. Just wanted to give a really big shout out to them because they're supporting me at the start of this thing before it really gets, you know, kind of any steam behind it. They were going to support me no matter what. So if you have people like them in your life, be sure you hang tight to them because they're very special. So let's get into this episode of the Scrapologist. Of course, before we get too far into that, we are going to talk about the sponsor of today's video. Just like our last video, Badge of Honor Co. clothing. Badge of Honor Co. Guys, Shazil, Alex, I can't thank you enough for getting involved with the channel, of course, and sharing you guys, sharing my videos on your guys' social media. That, I mean, it can't, words can't express how much the extra exposure and the help means. And I also want to say thank you for this shirt because this is my favorite design that they had. As soon as I saw this, I was like, this has to be one of the ones you guys send me for my sponsorship package because, I mean, this shirt is just so clean, bro. Like the water design, I love it. Really happy with the quality of the shirt, the fit, everything looks good, form-fitting, you know. So, Badge of Honor. Be sure to check out their website, and you'll be catching them. Probably the guys from Badge of Honor on the channel eventually as well. I'd love to have them on here to talk to you guys, and you can see what they're all about because super good guys that care about the martial arts a lot, and it would mean a lot to me if you guys supported them because they're supporting me. Welcome to episode 2 of the Scrapologist, guys. Before we get started on the UFC card, I want to talk a little bit about North Carolina's mixed martial arts scene, some of the things that are going on right now with some of the fighters in our local scene. So Josh, the gingerbread man Baker, just had a situation where he had to pull out of a fight due to an injury with his jaw, and he had surgery, and it just seems like a really serious injury. So we just want to update you guys and let you know that Josh Baker is going to be out for a while, and we do wish him a speedy recovery here at the channel. Also, Brian Battle, huge news. Brian Battle going on to the Ultimate Fighter. Volkanovski versus Ortega is the season. Middleweight, I can't wait. Brian Battle, if you don't know, he is an electrifying prospect out of North Carolina, Highstein MMA's team prodigy. He had no experience prior to starting training. I think he said in 2017 maybe or 2016. He looks great. He's got that one loss on his record that I commentated back in July of like 2 years ago. But other than that quick loss where he got caught in that armbar, he has just looked sensational. He's been finishing everybody lately, so I'm really looking forward to seeing him on The Ultimate Fighter. What a treat that's going to be for me to see a fighter that I've commentated several of his fights in the UFC. I mean, it's a long shot from your boy being on the mic in the UFC, but it's that little, you know, that gradual stepping stone, that bridge between me and the UFC perhaps. At least one person from the UFC has had to watch a fight that I've commentated if they've watched all of Brian Battle's fights, right? So that's a good thing. Other than that, friends of the show, Brent Williams, a big supporter of me at Fight For It and here on my new channel, is fighting soon, May 8th, I think. We wish him the best of luck in his fight. Pete De Leon just had a awesome fight last weekend, co-main event in a kickboxing match where I believe he won Fight of the Night. I didn't have a chance to watch it yet, but he just posted the link, so I'm looking forward to going home and checking out Pete's fight. Pete is a super interesting character, so if you haven't checked him out on social media, be sure to because he's an entertaining one. Little Bruzy Schroeder out of Elevate MMA Academy is going down to Florida, I think, soon. Pro fight for her coming up. We wish her good luck as well. So let's get into the UFC 261 in Florida. Florida in general. I mean, obviously it took place in Jacksonville, but it was one of the most Florida things I think I've ever seen. The live crowd was sorely missed by me. You know, I know a lot of people that follow the sport very closely. Like, you could say they're like hardcore fans. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of the term hardcore fan. I think it's a little elitist or even like snubby. I mean, it can be used as an insult as well. Like, oh, you're just some sweaty hardcore fan. But for the most part, I feel like it's almost used as like a gatekeeping term. So I feel like a lot of people who would call themselves hardcore fans really did not miss the live crowd. They like hearing the cornermen. They like hearing the interactions, the shots, the weight of the shots. Significant strikes are much easier to determine when you can really cleanly hear how well they hit. But for me, I really feel the palpable energy when a crowd is good. 95% of the time in MMA, your crowd's going to be pretty bad overall. They're probably going to boo at grappling, or they're going to woo if your fight's, not exciting enough, or they're going to pull out their cell phones and start waving them in the air or whatever. And all of that was present at this past weekend's card. But for the 5% of the time that it was good, it was good. When I first tuned into the main card and Jimmy Croot walked out and Highway to Hell started playing and the entire arena was singing Highway to Hell, I was like, okay, I miss this kind of thing. This is the kind of stuff that I missed. There was a lot of booing though. Zhang Xiaoli got booed right before she fought Rose, and I think she looked a little surprised, and I don't know if that comes from just like not fighting in front of people or thinking that maybe she had a little bit more support in America compared to Rose. But Rogan's comment where he was like, well, we're in Florida. I mean, the way he said it was just like he had been booed in Florida even. So the crowd was missed. I'm glad that the crowd is back. I'm glad that vaccines are being distributed in record number and that a sense of normalcy can return to the world. Particularly, it is interesting and nice that it kind of starts for the sports world in our little corner. Obviously, Dana is very eccentric, and you may not agree that this was the right time for fans to come back. I don't know. I'm glad that I don't have to be the one to make that call, but it is cool that it starts with us. For the mixed martial arts world. Particularly the UFC, but the mixed martial arts world. But we were the first sport to return after. We returned with no fans first before any other sports did, and now we're returning with fans before any other sports do. And obviously that has a lot to do with Dana White's overwhelming talent and desire to make money, but once again, I'm trying to see the positive in this situation, and I think that's a pretty positive thing overall. All right, the main event of the evening, Usman versus Masvidal. This whole card was an insane night of fights. Bad night to be a lead leg, and a very good night to be a power hitter or a power kicker. A great night of finishes on most of the prelim card and the main card as well. I did miss what most people called the fight of the night, the Molina fight, I believe it was. I missed that coming back home from dinner with my girlfriend, trying to get back and watch the card. So I missed a lot of the early prelims, and apparently that's where some of the best fights were. So we'll talk about at least we'll talk about Randy Brown versus Oliveira if there's time. But getting started with Usman versus Masvidal, not a long one. Definitely the kind of fight that if somebody told me it was going to be over a little ways away into the second round, I would say, maybe Masvidal. But Kamaru is powerful, man. I really never understood the narrative that Kamaru wasn't some kind of power hitter or wasn't strong. I think that was kind of something that was put out by Jorge and Covington, but Covington got finished by him, and he's finished others. So to me, Usman is a heavy hitter for sure. He might not be the heaviest hitter in the division, but he might be. Gilbert Burns hits hard, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's next for that division in a second after I talk about the fight. But for the fight itself, just as I predicted, Jorge did look better. Sadly, it wasn't enough to secure him a victory against Usman, but he did look significantly improved. He looked in better shape. He was landing body kicks. I didn't even bother to mention body kicks in my preview because I really didn't think that they were going to be a factor at all for Masvidal. I did not think he would be able to kick Usman and not get taken down. So I didn't even talk about the body kicks from Jorge Masvidal. He's one of the best body kickers in that division. But the low kicks were there for him, and the jab was there for him. The low kicks were really slowing Usman down. And Usman, even in that second round where he was blasting Jorge and eventually finished him, the low kicks were presenting themselves as a problem. So, I mean, low kicks in general, the calf kick, the scourge of MMA overall right now. I just kicked my tripod. The scourge of MMA overall. But if that fight would have gone a little bit longer, kind of like Stipe versus Junior Dos Santos. In Stipe versus Junior Dos Santos in his title defense, Stipe got kicked in the leg really hard, and he knocked Junior out before that became a problem. But a few more leg kicks, and you would have had a serious problem on your hands. And I feel like the same could be said for this fight. So while there were interesting exchanges, I don't see a path back to the title for Masvidal from here. I think that there are harder fights in the division that await him. I think Gilbert Burns is a harder fight for him than this fight would have been, or Covington may have been. I think the advantage that Masvidal brings into both of those matchups is the experience versus, he's had, like 3 years of fighting wrestlers now, or preparing for wrestlers. So someone like Gilbert, who's not necessarily a wrestler but a grappler and has really heavy hands and can strike really well, yeah, you're gonna have a tough night out versus him. So what's next for Masvidal? I really don't know. I couldn't tell you, man. It's going to depend on how long he wants to be out. He's never been knocked out before. The only other time he's ever been finished was with that weirdo reverse inverted triangle. One of the rarest submissions you'll ever see in grappling in general, let alone an MMA fight. So, Wonder Boy got finished by Pettis, took some time off, came back, looked super good. So getting finished for the first time later in your career is obviously better than being a guy who's been finished 6 times by the time you get to your first main event. But I think that Masvidal's future in the UFC is largely dependent on what kind of fights he wants to take. Now that he's lost to Usman twice, he can be free. He can fight anybody that he wants to fight. When Conor was coming back the first time, and they were talking about him coming back from his long layoff right into Khabib, I was like, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to fight Khabib immediately? Why would anybody want to take a long layoff and come back against the champ unless they were so prepared and so sure of themselves? For me, it's like, well, if you're Conor McGregor or if you're Jorge Masvidal, you can dictate who your next fight is. Just fight the fun fights. Conor versus Cowboy is a good example of that. That's just a fight he took for name value and recognition, and he blew the doors off of Cowboy. So, I mean, those kind of fights are out there for Jorge, fun fights, in several divisions, and in catchweight bouts even. Who knows? But it's up to him. It's up to him what kind of career he wants to have from here. I think he's made more than enough money and has more than enough popularity to make the decision for himself. It doesn't need to be on his agent. It doesn't need to be on his manager. It doesn't need to be on Dana. He's done enough work in his long tenure of fighting that he can decide what's next for him. And many guys, when they get to this level and they get finished like that in a main event, they're not the ones who get to make the next decision. But Jorge Masvidal has done enough to put himself into a position where he can. So we'll see. Kamaru looked like a beast. He is just too good, man. I really don't see who beats him other than maybe Wonder Boy. And we'll talk about that in a second because apparently they're doing Covington next. And Usman's still looking a little questionable on the feet. Looking great power-wise and showed great recognition of the flaws and the openings in Jorge Masvidal's game when he blasted him 3 or 4 times with that punch, finally finished him with it. That showed great adjustment in the striking and great fight IQ. But those moments where he was loading up and he looked sloppy. Against a guy like Wonder Boy, you cannot do that. You cannot just load up and swing over the fence with Wonder Boy. He will kick you in the stomach. He will push kick you. He will low line side kick your leg. He will kick you in the head. He'll hook kick you. I mean, Wonder Boy is a different beast in that realm. And he's also very good at doing takedown defense and getting away from the cage wall. That's why he's good. That's why it would be interesting to see him versus Usman instead of Usman, taking on Covington again. But I don't mind the Covington fight because that was the fight where I feel like Usman so far has been the most tested. This is what I like about Usman compared to Khabib. Khabib obviously is a once-in-a-generation, once-in-a-lifetime guy, once in a sport maybe even. We may never see anybody that had that aura of intimidation, that perfected record, that approach to fighting that was so vicious, never lost a round type of guy, arguably. You could say that he lost a couple to Tebow, but to me that fight's really close. But anyway, Khabib is dominant, very, very dominant. We never saw him tested. We never saw him in a moment where things weren't going according to plan. That's how good Khabib is. We never saw him have a moment in that octagon where he had to say, things aren't going the way I thought they would. I can't get this guy down. He's hit me a couple times. What am I going to do? That's never happened to him. But that Usman versus Covington fight is very competitive, very back and forth, and they knew what kind of fight would kind of play out if they wrestled, and they decided to nullify each other's wrestling by standing and trading. That created a less exciting fight for your grappling enthusiasts, but a more exciting fight for the casual fans at home. So two guys that most people think are boring fighting each other, and they have an exciting fight. I see why they're doing this again. Covington's obviously a person who can generate clicks. What I really don't like about Covington, outside of all the politics or whatever you want to say about him, is the fact that he sat out for this title shot for so long. I didn't like it when Stipe did that, and I think Stipe is one of the best heavyweight champions of all time, if not the best heavyweight champion of all time. I didn't like it when he just sat out and waited for Daniel again. I don't like it when people do that. That's just a personal thing that I do not care for in MMA. I think if you are a champion and you've defended your belt more than 3 times, you should get an immediate rematch. But in the situation with Stipe, there were so many other fights for him out there, and there's a lot of other fights for Covington out there that I think are interesting. I think him versus Burns is super duper interesting. I think him versus Wonderboy is really interesting, and I think Wonderboy would give him some serious problems. I don't think he'd be able to just hold Wonderboy down for 5 rounds. And the way he takes damage and just tries to walk through it, and the way he tries to play the volume game compared to Usman. You know, Covington's always in your face with volume, volume, volume. I don't think that will work with Wonderboy either. He's used to that. He's used to guys trying to pepper him in the karate world and stuff like that. So what's going on in this division? I mean, it's one of the best divisions in MMA. It always has been. It's always been hard to stay at the top. Yet the two guys that we think of when we think of the greatest of all time, one of them being George St. Pierre, who ruled this weight class with an iron fist for many years. Are we going to see that kind of fight level or that kind of record from Usman? Maybe, man. Maybe. He looks really good. And last night I did not see a fighter with many weaknesses for what he has to go up against in that division. Wonderboy is the biggest problem. If he can get past Wonderboy, man, he's in for a long title defense reign. Maybe even a record breaker. So stay tuned on Kamaru Usman, man, because in his own words, he's a problem. And it took me a long time to see it. I thought he was really cringe too at first, and when he beat Emil Meek, I was like, he just beat Emil Meek. Like, who cares? And then before you know it, he was dominating Tyron Woodley. So, I mean, this kid, he's gotten so much better over time. And now that his father is out of jail and everything in his life is going as good as it can go, it'll be interesting to see if he can stay as hungry as he was in his climb to the top. Because that's always the hard part, isn't it? So Kamaru Usman, man, I'm looking forward to whatever it is next for him. But I think it's, Colby Covington and another finish, if I had to guess. Co-main event of the evening was Zhang Xiaoli taking on Rose Namajunas in what was scheduled to be a 5-rounder and a very competitive fight. In my eyes, the most competitive fight on this card. However, it did not turn out to be very competitive on paper. I will say that before Rose landed that knockout, I thought the fight was playing out kind of like the pace of the first Joanna fight. Another thing I'll say is that I thought Zhang Xiaoli looked noticeably smaller body-wise than she did versus Joanna. And I don't know if that's because they wanted an easier weight cut on this time or if they thought a bigger emphasis on cardio was important for this fight. Maybe they were planning on it to be like another 5-rounder war like the Joanna fight. Rose may be a better overall striker than Joanna now. It's just how things are. I mean, she's beaten her twice, So, we've got to start paying Rose her respect as possibly the best striker below Amanda Nunes in the women's MMA world. I don't think that I don't have a problem with making that statement. I mean, she head kicked the crap out of Michelle Waterson. She did the same thing last night. An incredible performance. Another tearjerker for me, man. When I told you guys about the last time when I saw Rose win the belt and how emotional I got. Same thing happened last night, man. I watched her when she was getting ready to fight, and I was talking to my friend Eric, who I was watching the fights with, and you could see Rose saying something. I'm like, what is she saying? I'm like trying to hear, but the crowd's going off, buffer's going off. If the crowd would have been there, if it would have been like 3 weeks ago, I definitely would have been able to hear it. But she was saying, I'm the best. And Rogan said that on the broadcast, and then when he said it in the interview, and then she said it in the post-fight interview where she's like, I am the best. Dude, a single tear welled up in my eye and just rolled right on down, man. Something about that. Something about Rose. Something about her whole demeanor. So pure. And it was an amazing performance. Amazing performance. Low kicks, again, played a big factor in this fight. I could see the strategy from Rose's camp here, which was probably to conserve her energy by peppering her with low kicks that would eventually set up the high kick. It's just the high kick presented itself so early compared to probably where they assumed it was going to show up. But as soon as it showed up, Rose saw it, capitalized on it, and took her down. I mean, Zhang Weili's championship reign is over just like that. Rose was definitely the most live underdog on the card, and I cleaned up on her a little bit. I thought that she would get it done by submission, so I lost a little bit of money there. But finishing the first round, head kick, looked beautiful, definitely a viral knockout. In my opinion, completely beyond fair stoppage. I can't really see any kind of argument for Zhang Weili not being completely unconscious at the end of that fight. I've seen a few people say online, but for the most part, everybody's respecting it and recognizing that that she was pretty gone. In the words of DC, she was gone, bro. DC's like my favorite personality in all of sports. But yeah, what's next for Rose? Well, I think that other Chinese girl is next for Rose. Yan Yewang. I'm so sorry. But I believe the number 3 ranked Chinese fighter in the UFC that I believe is a teammate of Zhang Weili, so if I'm not mistaken, she's probably next for Rose. She looks really good. She's 13-1 or something like that. My tablets died, so all my notes are gone. But from what I remember, she's got finishes. She's been blazing through those rankings super fast. They love China. They love that market. I don't see why not. Do it. If it turns out Rose can blow through her, then Rose looks even. God, I'm so sorry. Rose looks even better. I think that's it. Jan. Everybody else, I feel like that division is not necessarily stagnant. It's got a lot of moving parts. Carla Esparza is still like floating around in there in that mix of like top 5. So I feel like there's a lot of different directions you can go. And I feel like they were probably putting a lot of their eggs in the Zhang Weili versus Valentina Shevchenko at 125 basket before last night. Because Rose and Valentina are never going to fight. They're friends. They're training partners. There's a cool interaction between them after they both won on the card. But yeah, they're training partners. They go back a ways. So, for me, what do I want to see? I want to see Jan, but I think Mackenzie Dern is your dark horse. That's who Dana White could slide in, not Dana White, but Sean Shelby, the matchmakers. They could slide in Mackenzie Dern in this slot right here, and people are just going to accept it because of everything that's going on in the division right now. I don't think anybody wants to see Carla Esparza fight her. I don't think anybody really knows who Yan is yet, the other Chinese woman fighter in that division. But people know who Mackenzie Dern is, and people also have this perceived weakness in Rose on the ground, which I don't buy at all. I think that Rose is very underrated on the ground. I don't know if she's Mackenzie Dern's level, but I'm interested to see those two girls mix it up on the ground because I think Rose has got a little something for her, especially the transitions and the scrambles. I think that Rose is really, really good there compared to most traditional gi practicing people. So that's where I would like to see the division go. Maybe Mackenzie needs one more win before that. Maybe she can fight Yan and the winner can fight Rose. Sounds good to me. As for Zhang Xiaoli, Carla Esparza. Let's do Carla Esparza next. Or let's do Joanna again, and winner fights the winner of Rose's next fight. I mean, I don't know what you do with Joanna, because obviously Joanna's coming back to this division. So, I mean, she's going to fight one of these girls. She's going to fight one of those top three girls. Maybe she fights the Chinese girl. Who knows how it's going to shake out. That division is kind of unpredictable right now, which is part of what makes it interesting. And Rose winning only shakes it up more, just like she shook it up at 217 when she won the belt from Joanna, knocking her out in the first round. Things changed in that division after Rose won the belt, and eventually we got Zhang Xiaoli out of it. So who knows what the division is going to look like next year this time, especially if Rose is still a champion. The Tro-Main, as someone called it in my comment section last time, the Tro-Main or the Tri-Main, the first title fight of the 3 title fight card, Valentina Shevchenko taking on Jessica Andrade. Whoa! Valentina Shevchenko only further cementing herself as the #1 women's fighter in the world, in my opinion, overall, like in skill set. Amanda Nunes has obviously got a higher accolade of records in fighting, but Amanda Nunes doesn't look as complete necessarily as Valentina Shevchenko does. I just don't know if there's any kind of weakness. I mean, for me, it was obvious about 30 seconds into that fight that Jessica Andrade was not going to have anything for Valentina. And after the last fight Valentina had where she lost that round in the wrestling, I think it fired her up, man. I think she went in the gym and hit the wrestling and grappling hard. And now we're seeing someone who's obviously got elite level striking for women's MMA, possibly the best female striking in MMA, if not the best. You know, now Rose is making me question all this stuff. But we know she can go the distance. We know she has great cardio in a fight that isn't going her way the whole time. She's fought Amanda twice. She went the distance with Amanda in our last fight, in a championship fight, so we know she can take a shot. She fought Amanda and didn't get knocked out. So, I mean, where is the perceived weakness for Valentina Shevchenko? I don't know. If Black Widow from the Marvel movies was a real person, it would probably be Valentina Shevchenko. I mean, she fights like an assassin. She speaks like a million languages. She is trained in like traditional ballroom dance. If you told me that she came straight out of the Red Room, I would believe you. I mean, I'd like to see her fight Jake Paul. I think that's the next fight for her, in my opinion. I mean, I think she would absolutely start Jake Paul in a boxing match. I mean, she doesn't even need to use kicks. But if she was allowed to use kicks, she would finish him in under a round. No cap. Zero cap, as the kids say. So, you know, what's next for Valentina, man? I really thought Zhang Xiaoli was next if they could get that fight. Her and Rose are never going to fight. So she just continues to rule the women's flyweight division with an iron fist for the next 8 years, I guess. I mean, who knows who's waiting in the wings, who's coming up the ranks, who's training right now as a 17-year-old prodigy that will eventually one day become the person who beats Valentina Shevchenko. But for right now, from where I sit, nah. Weidman, what can I say? In the words of the great Dave Chappelle, what can I say about Weidman's leg that hasn't already been said about Afghanistan? That is a bad injury. Obviously, there's only been like 4 in all of MMA history. So bizarre and mind-blowing that Weidman, who was on the other side of it all those years ago against Anderson Silva, now on the receiving end of the leg break. One of the most Twilight Zones, like serendipitous, like ironic maybe even things. I'm not a master of definition, but for me, that is just one of the most like... the odds, I mean, Herb being the ref in both fights too. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's already such a rare injury. And to see it like happen with those two guys just being in the orbit of it, pretty crazy. The odds are just crazy. I don't know what the numbers are on that, but I'm sure somebody's out there doing the math right now. Leg kicks. Why are leg kicks such a problem in MMA right now? What happened? Well, Coach Scott Clausen, who I'm friends with on Facebook and friend of the show, he commented that almost every striking class he teaches, there's kick check drills, because if you know how to check a kick, you're going to see more situations like what you saw last night. We don't see a lot of guys that know how to check kicks at the highest level in the UFC. So a lot of guys that are not lifelong kickers are throwing hard shots to the legs with their legs, swinging their limbs with reckless abandon. And, especially Justin Gaethje, he throws leg kicks like he's trying to hurt his own leg. If you throw your leg like that into somebody who's checking a kick with their knee, you're just gonna have that injury that we saw Chris Weidman get last night. Why is it so rare then? Well, it's because most people don't know how to check leg kicks, and now leg kicks are just now becoming the scourge, or the meta, as we say in the video game world. The meta of MMA is changing over to this calf kick, leg kick, which before it was almost like low-line side kicks were what everybody was complaining about. Now everybody's complaining about the calf kick and the leg kick. You got to take your weight off your front foot. I mean, that's really all I can say. I'm not a striking expert. I'm not a person who's an expert at breaking down striking exchanges. My friend Trevor Hayes is a genius about that. I'd love to pick his brain on this subject just in general, because he's such a knowledgeable Muay Thai person, and he probably could explain why the prevalent injuries are all on the MMA side and not on the Muay Thai kickboxing side. And I think a lot of that has to do with the technique behind the checks. So that's all I can really say about Hall versus Weidman. There was nothing really else to talk about other than I'm glad Uriah Hall is finally getting his due as a fighter, really. I mean, obviously, no one wants to win the way he won last night, but I feel like a lot of people are saying, like, all right, maybe Uriah Hall will be a guy who can fight for the title in 2 fights. And he's always had that. He was the next guy when he was a young guy, and it's so hard to be the next guy and then it not work out. Just like when you're a kid, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this can relate, but when you're a kid and you're in elementary school and people are just like, you're gifted and talented. You're going to the gifted and talented class. You've got so much potential. You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. And then you grow up and you're like, I'm not really interested in being a doctor or a lawyer, or whatever. And, you always had this complex about not living up to all this potential that other people saw in you. And that's something that athletes go through their whole life. And it's very hard to be a guy like that and to come back from the expectation being crushed over and over again, even, because Uriah Hall, we saw him lose several fights. Obviously, he has had amazing performances, but he's been a back and forth guy. Now he's starting to get a streak going, He's rising. Before, he was kind of stagnant and gatekeeping. So, much respect to Uriah Hall for staying determined and staying focused on the path, because it is very difficult, obviously. Thomas Almeida. You remember when Thomas Almeida was going to be the next guy, and then Cody Garbrandt sent him to the Shadow Realm, and he never came back the same? That's all it takes. All it takes is one fight and one bad result, and suddenly you're just not the same guy anymore. So for Uriah Hall to have so many bad nights and so many bad results, and to still be here this late in his career and being talked about in the championship conversation, it says a lot. So much respect to him, and much prayers and respect to Chris Weidman as well on his recovery. Obviously, you got to think it's it for him. Probably the retirement after this. That is a horrible injury. You never come back 100% from an injury like that. But I would like to see him get back out there, maybe. Maybe, if not in the octagon, then maybe do submission underground, something like that. I just want to believe that somebody can come back and be athletic after an injury like that again. We saw Anderson. He didn't look great after he came back from that injury. He only won 1 fight after he came back from that injury, but he did compete. He looked good. Versus Michael Bisping, he looked good until Bisping dug deep and won the round that he got knocked out in, basically. So, Chris Weidman, best of luck to you on your recovery, sir. Jimmy Croot versus Anthony Lionheart Smith. Anthony said in the press conference after the fight that he was surprised to find himself as an underdog, and I guess I should have been surprised too. I really did not expect Anthony Smith to come into the fight and be noticeably bigger than Jimmy Croot. That was not something I was expecting. I mean, Jimmy Croot's just one of those guys where his frame and his head and his neck is so thick. I had this perception of him in my mind of being just this impossibly big light heavyweight. And in reality, after watching him versus Anthony Smith, I think he could probably compete at middleweight, maybe. I mean, he's a big lad, but maybe with some nutrition, maybe he could cut some of that like chin weight down. He could get to 185 and be a real nightmare. But anyway, I digress. He looked okay. I mean, I thought he looked good. He definitely got touched a lot on the face, and you can't do that versus Anthony Smith. But yeah, Anthony Smith was having some problems with the leg kicks that himself fired back with one of his own and just dead-legged Jimmy Croot. At this time, we don't really know anything about Jimmy Croot's injury. I'm recording this on Sunday, and we've heard about Weidman. We know that he obviously had surgery and is fine overall, but we don't know the extent of Croot's injury right now. Was it a freak thing like Michael Chandler where an hour later he was walking around fine, or is this like an ACL? Because for me, it reminded me a lot of when I tore my ACL riding my skateboard. When I went to go stand up, the exact same thing happened. Like I fell the exact same way he fell, where the leg kind of folds to the side. That screams like the ACL, the hard stop of your ACL is like in free swing, basically. Very hard for me to watch when that happens. Obviously, as someone who just went through like 9 months of recovery for the same injury, I feel for him if that is the case. But hopefully it was more like a Michael Chandler thing where he's going to be fine next week and he can fight again. Who knows? But Jimmy Croot, long road back for him, man. I don't know what's next for him. Maybe a guy like Khalil Roundtree, just someone on the fringe of that top 10 in that division. Just to see, I mean, him versus Paul Craig was an awesome fight, so you really can't do that one again unless Paul Craig loses his next one too. So, yeah, I think that, there's a ton of Russian guys in light heavyweight he could fight, but I would be in no hurry to fight any of them if I were him after that fight. So we'll see what Jimmy Croot's injury looks like, and then we can kind of guess or maybe try to assume around the time when he comes back what's next for him. But Anthony Smith just continues to be a problem in that top 5, man. Every time I think he might be on the way down or the decline or the way out, he crawls his way back in and starts winning fights and starts beating people again, and he looked great in that fight last night. That's how you get a leg kick finish. You obviously don't want it to go down the way Uriah Hall went down. If you're going to injure someone, you kind of want it to come from a strike of your own. So, great fight to start off the card, and kind of a dark, ominous precursor to what we could expect from the leg kicks for the rest of the night. Like I said, bad night to be a lead leg. There's a little bit of time left. I don't want to stretch these videos out too long because I know you guys, if you're like me, you have a super busy schedule. You like to watch YouTube like while you're at work in the background or while you're cleaning the house or something like that. So I don't want these videos to go on for hours and hours like some other MMA breakdown card videos. They can, if that's something you guys want in the future, but for now, keep it short and simple. There's a little bit of time left, so let's talk about Randy Brown versus Oliveira. Randy Brown looks renewed, man. I really think that he looked like not necessarily a new fighter, but a better version, a more refined version of the Randy Brown we know from the past. He seems to have taken the losses before. The last fight he had before this, he won, obviously, but the losses and the things that he suffered in those losses that led to those losses, I felt like even though we only got 2 minutes and 50 seconds of Randy Brown in that last fight, we saw monumental improvements and his power looked good. He's always had power for that division, but he's always had trouble kind of landing. He was landing big time on Oliveira, and you saw that it, obviously led to big setup, big finish. Him one arm with the rear naked choke. Very hard to finish a guy like that, but he made it look easy. What's next for Randy Brown? Get this man a ranked opponent, like someone in that top 10. I think he could be tested by a number 12 guy or a number 11 guy. So Maybe he fills in on short notice. He took care of Oliveira quick. He could slide in on short notice a really big fight now. After a win like that, you become a guy who is, if you're available, you could potentially fight even a top 5 guy because no one else is available on short notice. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Randy Brown. I definitely think the kid is really strong, and I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for him. Oliveira, however, I think he's lost 5 out of his last 7 or 6 out of his last 7. I can't, my notes, they're gone. My laptop, my tablet died. But anyway, Oliveira is probably it for him. And if it's not it for him, maybe one more fight and we'll have seen the last of the Brazilian cowboy and he'll ride off into the sunset one last time. I mean, what a legacy. Probably, in the words of, Jack Slack said he's one of the dirtiest fighters on the planet. And I think that is true. But he has always been dirty in a way that's friendly competition, sort of like trading paint in NASCAR. Frowned upon, but not going to lose you a ton of friends unless you hurt someone. So, that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the second episode of Scrapologist. What's next for this channel? Well, that depends. Maybe we just keep doing UFC and other card show breakdowns. Maybe we release a co-commentator or a fight where I upload a fight from a local show with my commentary over the top of it. Or we could go watch like Fight For It fights that I think are great, and I could over-commentate the top of them and analyze them a little bit more, break them down a little bit more. Scrapper's Delight, I'm thinking, is the name of that series where I go in depth on one particular fight. So yeah, I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of possibilities and options for the future, but who knows where it's going to go. So if you guys have anything in particular that you would like to see on the channel, anything at all, please let me know. I will try my best to make it happen. I'll try my best to make content that I think you guys will enjoy. That's what we're all here for at the end of the day. Thanks for tuning in to Scrapologist. And, yeah, no sign off yet. Got to get a catchphrase. So if you can think of a good catchphrase for me, let me know as well.